Whoa! This is episode 13 of Campers and Vans Getting Coffee. 13, spooky. Okay, this episode's cool. I have on Laura Austin. It's a bit different. She is traveling solo in her 16-foot-long Airstream Nest trailer. She's currently on, or at the time we recorded this, she was currently on a 2-month road trip around the entire U.S., just visiting a bunch of stuff. It was a pretty crazy, fast-paced trip. So we talk about that. But Laura's also the author of a book called Solo, a guidebook to traveling alone. That's available to purchase at Urban Outfitters. So we talk a lot about that too, like traveling alone and solo and kind of the benefits of that and what that means and that kind of the clarity and help that you can get from that. And we discuss like how it kind of evolved for her, like how her first solo trip happened, sort of not under the best circumstances, but it happened, and then it turned out to be a positive thing, and we talk about all this stuff. So it's super cool. I definitely recommend to keep listening since you're already here. Why not? We talk about a lot of fun stuff with all that. Plus we talk about, karaoke parties. Laura catches alligators. We talk about why she prefers traveling alone for the most part, the stigma of female travelers, all this cool stuff. So without further ado, here is Laura Austin, and here is the episode. Hello, Laura. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Travis. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. This is cool. So you are kind of known for like solo traveling. Like that's what you do, right?
Yeah, that's what I've accidentally become known for over the years. That's what people seem to gravitate towards.
So how did this all get started?
As most kind of big life changes, just challenging times tend to be a catalyst for positive change. So I was actually, in 2014, I was going through a tough time with a boyfriend at the time, and he decided just to like take off right before New Year's without telling me.
Oof. And
so I was stuck in this predicament of like, do I want to stay home and melt into a puddle of self-pity? Or I opted for actually going out on a road trip that we had been wanting to go on together, just as kind of a slap in the face to him. But also, I just need to get out of town. So I live in Los Angeles, and White Sands National Monument had been on my radar for a long time. So the day before New Year's, so New Year's Eve, I hopped in my car and drove 13 hours to White Sands, New Mexico. And White Sands, for those who don't know, it's this really surreal place in New Mexico with these sand dunes, but the sand is pure white. So it just looks like rolling hills of snow, but the juxtaposition is that like people can be dressed in short sleeves and shorts looking like it's on snow. So it's like a lovely place for a photographer. But anyway, I went on this like week-long trip by myself and just gained so much clarity. And it ended up being a very fruitful trip. And I came back with a whole new sense of self-confidence and kind of forgot all my troubles along the way and worked through a lot of stuff that I needed to.
Wow, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, White Sands too, people go like sledding on the sand dunes too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's really funny to see people like trying to sled down these sand dunes and like I said, in shorts and t-shirts, but it looks like they're sledding on snow. So it's a very photogenic place for sure.
Very cool. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, like how do you think all this happened on this trip that you kind of gained this clarity? Was it just, do you think it was being alone kind of in this different place that really did it for you? Was it, I mean, what do you think it was?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that can be gained out of solo travel. I think one, first and foremost, is when you're on a road trip by yourself, you're spending so much time alone and you're stuck with nothing but you and your thoughts, really. So anything that you do need to work through is, I think, eventually going to come to the front of your mind, whether you want to deal with it or not. So I think that much time alone forces you to deal with whatever it is that you may have been pushing down. And then in addition, there's just this especially for females, this sense of self-confidence that can be gained from traveling alone, because it's not all like sunshine and rainbows. You're going to have to deal with things like a flat tire or getting lost or whatever it is, whatever adversities you need to deal with on the road. You're going to have to overcome them on your own. And as challenging as that can be at times, I think it's also you gain a whole new sense of self-confidence and realize like, oh, I don't necessarily need someone else to do things for me. And it's just kind of an eye-opening experience, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So when you're kind of traveling alone, I guess either while you're actually traveling on the road, like driving down, or kind of while you're just camping alone or wherever, do you generally prefer to have just kind of silence, or will you play music, or will you play a podcast or something, or is it different depending on the situation?
Podcasts have become my best friends. I feel like my friends on the road are the podcast I listen to. I have a whole swath of things I listen to, from like This American Life to Radiolab to another show on Being. And then my friend Christopher Ryan has a great podcast called Tangentially Speaking. But that tends to occupy a lot of time. But something I need to be wary of when I'm traveling on the road is that when I'm listening to podcasts, those are kind of occupying my mind. So I'm not actually maybe being productive thinking my own thoughts and thinking about stuff that I might need to be contemplating, whether it's like a lack of inspiration or like I try to be cognizant of not just blanking out too much. So when I realize, oh, I've been listening to podcasts for too long, I switch to music, and that's when maybe the stuff that I need to deal with comes to the forefront, when I'm not tuned into a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I can understand that. Like I'll just be here at like alone in my apartment. I don't live alone, but when I'm like just by myself, I feel like I have to have like a podcast on or something. And I'm like, man, why do I have to have this, constant, I just have to be
stimulation.
Yeah, totally. So, it's something I've been trying to do as well, is just kind of, like I can wash the dishes with nothing on and just think to myself, I don't have to have something playing in the background, so.
Right. I think that's part of just the way we're made these days, is just like constant stimulation. So I think it's important to recognize that. And sometimes I'll even drive in silence, like particularly at night. I think it's nice to just drive for a little while without any sound coming through your stereo system, just to kind of allow time for thinking, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, but yeah, there's two sides to it, because on the other hand, it's kind of cool that you can listen to all these podcasts and be either entertained or like learn all this new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess you just need to find the balance between.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? So this trip happened. Then what was kind of like? Then what happened? Did that like inspire you to do another solo trip? Did something happen after that?
Yeah, so since I did that over New Year's, I figured that would be kind of a cool tradition to continue every New Year's. I haven't been good about, there's been times where I've had boyfriends at the time, and obviously boyfriends aren't big fans of their girlfriends going on solo road trips without them over a holiday. So I've skipped a couple years, but I try and make a point every New Year's to go out on a solo road trip, just because I think it's a nice way to start the year on your own foot, doing exactly what you want to do rather than waking up New Year's Day hungover. So, and also beyond that, people, when I set out on the first trip, people just seemed to really gravitate towards it and ask me all sorts of questions like, are you lonely? Like, why would you even want to do this? And I could tell that there was an interest in it, and that it was something that I think not a lot of people had seen females do. So I kind of just rolled with this momentum of like, oh, people seem to gravitate towards this and are interested in it. So I kind of just made it my thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect. So do you, I mean, generally on these like solo trips, I mean, you're on like a 2-month-long trip right now, right?
Yeah. This is the biggest endeavor that I pulled off. Normally they're like a week long.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, how after that week, or I mean, around like, let's say around day 5 or 6, are you starting to feel lonely and ready to come back and interact with your friends and family again, or how are you feeling?
I mean, that's an interesting question. People all the time ask me if I feel lonely, and honestly, well, first of all, I'm an introvert, so I'm totally fine being alone for an extended amount of time. But also, I think it's just like where your mind is at. Like when I'm on these solo road trips, I'm intentionally being alone, so I don't have it in my head like, oh, it would be nice if someone was with me, because it's not like I hit up a ton of friends and no one said that they wanted to go on a road trip with me. It's not like I'm in this circumstance just because that was my only option. I think when you go into these trips with the intention to be alone, knowing that like this alone time is you're going to get something out of it, I see it as being productive and don't see it as like this unfortunate situation. Because I know when I come back, my friends will be there. But I honestly, I see it as honestly, solo road trips for me, I think challenging times are a catalyst for positive change. And rather than like waiting for something negative to happen in my life, I think my solo road trips are kind of this manufactured thing where I know I'm going to have to overcome stuff. So every time I go on a solo road trip, I come back with a new perspective. So I haven't gotten too lonely on the road. There's times when I'm like sitting watching the most amazing sunrise I've ever seen. And sometimes I think like, gosh, it'd be fun to like have someone sitting here that I could share it with or like reminisce about it with afterwards. But I guess the nice thing about being a photographer and having some sort of an audience is that I can share these experiences with other people. So it's not like a missed opportunity. So rather than just sharing it with one person, I can share it with thousands of people. So I don't feel like I'm losing too much there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good point. It's cool.
Yeah.
So all eventually led into you writing and creating your book, right?
Yeah, the book was kind of a fluke. So my friend, she had she had a booth in a trade show, and she was featuring a bunch of different zines. And she approached me. She's like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to like throw something together to have in this trade show?" So I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess solo travel is my thing. So I'll make a guidebook to solo travel." So it's called Solo. Real creative there. And it started as a small thing, just kind of part photo journal, part diary of like tips for traveling alone. It's less about like, here's what you should do, and more of a cerebral thing of what you can gain out of traveling alone. And I kind of, each edition I made it a little bigger, and then a couple months ago, the book buyer from Urban Outfitters randomly hit me up and said, "Hey, do you want to send us a copy of your book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then so now they bought a couple thousand copies, and it's for sale in every Urban Outfitters in the country, which is kind of mind blowing to me because it started off as this little dinky zine that I made like 100 copies of, and now it's for sale all over the country. So it's kind of a crazy fluke that worked out nicely.
Yeah, that's so cool. Congrats on that. Awesome.
Thank you.
So, who do you think, like, who is this book for? Did you write it for someone in particular, just kind of for yourself, or what do you think about that?
I mean, the people who have responded most to the book, and also just solo travel in general, have been young females, because I think there's kind of a stigma against females traveling alone. Like it's just something that people say like, this is unsafe, particularly for younger women, just because I think before you set out on a trip like this, you think about all the things that can go wrong, and most people live in fear, so that's preventing them from doing it. But in particular, like I've had one girl who said that because of my work, she wanted to go on a solo road trip and her parents wouldn't let her, and then she showed them my work and they let her go on the trip, and she said she had a life-changing experience. So it's like, it's things like that when I get messages from women saying like, because of you, I went to Iceland by myself and it changed my life. my work, it's less about like, hey, look at all these cool places I'm going. It's more trying to encourage people to get out and see the world for themselves, in particular, if you can do that alone. Solo travel is just a catalyst to self-discovery, I think. So it's cool when I hear these stories from particularly young females saying like, yeah, because I went on this trip, it changed my life in some way. So that's a really cool bonus for me.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that most people kind of live in fear and are probably afraid of maybe traveling alone. What do you think? Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think I guess, are their fears generally like a security issue and like that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, fear, whether it's, a female traveling alone, security for one, like say you're camped like multiple times on this current trip I'm on, this Airstream trip, I've camped in the middle of nowhere, and I feel safe when I'm in an RV park or a campsite or something. But when I'm literally isolated alone, of course, the thought crosses my head like, gosh, if anyone realizes like I'm a female by myself, I'm like, that situation seems prone to someone, I don't know, breaking into my trailer or something. But luckily I haven't had too many sketchy situations. And beyond just security issue, whether like dealing with a flat tire or being stuck somewhere, like car mechanics. And I'm not too mechanically savvy, but luckily I mean, I at least know how to change a tire. But I haven't dealt with too many issues where I've been stranded. But also, I've come to realize through traveling alone, like most people are scared to do it because they're worried about strangers. But what solo travel has taught me is the kindness of strangers. Because anytime I've been stuck in any sort of issue, complete strangers have pulled through and helped me out. Whether that's like, it took me a minute to figure out how to hitch my trailer to my car by myself when I do decide to unhitch, but any circumstance where I had to do that, anyone's willing to like back me into or just direct me into the hitch. And it's proved, the solo travel has proved the good in people as opposed to being scared of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you just kind of assume the worst. And when you're thinking about that, like going alone, you probably just think of your mind just immediately goes to the worst things that could happen, right? But
exactly.
Yeah, like exactly. Do you think like those, even having the fears of security or someone breaking into the RV or anything, are really warranted? Do you have anything to kind of prevent that or anything? Or do you think it's more kind of just created in your mind? I mean, obviously there is the chance that it could happen, right? But
yeah, I mean, I think you need to keep your wits about you. You need, like, if there's been any time where I felt like I was in kind of a sketchy situation, I just leave that situation. I just move on. Like, oh, this place doesn't feel the safest, I'm going to go camp somewhere else. I think I'm an optimist almost to a fault, thinking like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm going to be good. But also, like, if I do get this gut feeling that a situation isn't the best situation to be in, then I mean, you got to keep your wits about you. You need to be level-headed in that situation. You can't just assume you're invincible, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Just kind of use some common sense and stuff, you know?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And then, like, as far as, changing a flat tire or mechanical issues or anything like that, I mean, do you have any tips for somebody when they're getting started? If they are afraid of that stuff, do you have any tips for them to, like, should they kind of get acquainted with that, maybe watch some YouTube videos before they go out? Or do you think you should just go out and just kind of figure it out as you go and maybe ask some people for help? Or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think anyone who's doing any sort of car travel, learn how to change a tire before you set out. Like, I think any person on this planet should know how to change a flat tire. It's a lot easier than it seems, and it's just a valuable skill to have. Like, anytime I've had to do it on my own, I just feel like a complete badass. But it's like, it's just like, yeah, I just did that by myself. I think that, for one, is just something that you should know, because I've been stranded in situations, like in Scotland, I got stranded literally in the middle of nowhere with a flat tire. But as far as other mechanical stuff, I haven't had to deal with too much. I mean, just I think there's a lot of preemptive stuff that you should do before you set out on a trip. Like make sure your tires have enough tread, make sure your oil's good. Like I change my oil before every trip I go on, make sure my car's in good shape. And because of that, I've never been stuck with too many mechanical issues on the road. So get the work done on your car you need to do before you set on this trip, and hopefully that will prevent you dealing with stuff on the road. But also, if something does happen, there's AAA, there's whatever mechanics all over the place. So you don't be scared of going on a trip alone because you aren't that mechanically savvy. Because there's ways you can deal with it on the road. I wouldn't want that preventing people from doing it, because I certainly don't know much about car mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Don't use that as an excuse, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, do you have a preference for traveling alone or traveling with a companion, or are they just kind of different and they each have their own, space?
They're different. I mean, people are going to think I'm a jerk, but I tend to prefer traveling alone and then meeting up with people along the way. So like on this current 2-month trip I'm on, like right now I'm parked in front of a friend's house in Portland, and I have people that I'm visiting on the road, but I'm just really, since I've gotten used to traveling alone, I've become very particular about who I travel with, just because I've gotten so set in my own ways. So I've noted, like I recently went on a trip to Sri Lanka with 3 other people, and that was a tough situation because I have a certain way I like to travel, and I can put up with a lot of stuff, and not everyone's that way. So it's, I'm just cautious of who I do travel with. If there's someone who is adaptable and easygoing and open-minded, sure, I'd love to travel with them, but I've kind of become an old curmudgeon as far as my travel tendencies. Like, this is what I'm doing. If you like it, cool. If not, I'm going to leave you on the side of the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool part about like traveling alone, is you could really do whatever you want, like whenever you want, There's no like making plans with somebody else and agreeing to it. You just do whatever you want.
Exactly. And like that sounds super selfish, which I think it is. But at the same time, like as a photographer, I tend to want to wake up really early, no matter if I want to, like my body wants to wake up really early or not, because like sunrise is one of the best times to get out and shoot. So, and in a lot of situations, I'm hiking to places that are not that, like I'm not just walking out of the trailer or whatever and shooting right there. I tend to like drive somewhere in the dark and then go hiking for a half an hour to get this sunrise shot. And people who aren't interested in photography would just be like, you're crazy. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So have you found yourself like, do you enjoy like meeting other people that are traveling, or like talking to other folks at campgrounds and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's one of the coolest things about traveling alone, is that I think I stand out when I'm going to places alone, especially with this Airstream right now, because it's weird to see someone pull up with this trailer and a young female pops out of the car. People are like, what is she doing? Like, who does this? So it's traveling alone, I think, is an incredible icebreaker to meet strangers, because whether I'm eating at a restaurant by myself or at a campground, people tend to like come up and ask questions like, what are you doing? What's your story? And it's been a lovely catalyst to make friends with other people. And along this trip in particular that I'm on currently, a lot of friends have put me in touch with people they knew in different towns I was stopping in, and I've had amazing experiences becoming really close with, like, in particular, I went through this ghost town in Texas and was welcomed in like a local. But had I been traveling with someone else, you're kind of occupied by the company you're with, and you're cool with that. So I think traveling alone, as much as it seems like I'm a hermit, I actually see it as an opportunity to meet people that I wouldn't meet otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally imagine that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like your thing about like how you almost like stand out because you're in this Airstream and you're, a young female by yourself. So it's kind of cool. Like if you want to meet people and like have people kind of come up to you maybe and start conversations, just make yourself or make some sort of conversation starter about yourself or like on your RV or rig, put something weird on it that people can comment on or something,
Totally. And the Airstream I'm in now, I think there's barely any of these on the road. So like every time I'm at a gas station, one time I was at a gas station in Carmel and literally couldn't even pump my gas because I had a line of people asking me about the trailer and what I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. But it's like a nice catalyst. And then I learn about them and their story. And it's been a fun way to meet people from all different walks of life on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about your Airstream then. So it's kind of like a newer Airstream. It's not like the typical aluminum one. It's different, right?
Correct. It's called the Nest, and it's their first fiberglass model. So I think they're trying to like branch into a different market. And I'm incredibly partial to the typical Airstreams made out of metal. I think it's a classic, beautiful look, but this thing is completely streamlined. Honestly, I feel like I'm in a little spaceship. It's a 16-foot trailer and has everything I need in it. There's a microwave, there's a refrigerator, there's a shower, there's toilet, 2-burner stove, sink. There's a dining area that folds down into a bed, and then also ridiculous features. There's LED lights throughout the whole thing, and I can change the color of them with my phone.
I'll get some mood lighting.
Yeah, and I can also turn it to disco mode, so it will pulse to music. I've yet to have a party in there, but my friend in Portland has a karaoke microphone, so I think we might have a karaoke party in there before I leave, just to take advantage of the disco lights at some point.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, but like when I'm camping, I'm used to camping, and in this thing, I feel like I'm cheating because I'm basically pulling a luxury hotel room behind my car.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
right. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah. I guess not. I feel like a bit of like I said, I feel like I'm cheating, but I'm definitely not complaining. Like it's so comfortable in that thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it looks cool too. It's kind of like, it is kind of like retro modern and, it is like cute. That's kind of how I would describe the look of it, I guess.
Yeah. So many people have come up to me, especially when it's a young blonde female, like, oh, that thing's so cute. I'm like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, yeah. But no, honestly, it is cute. And as far as trailers go, I feel like unless you get an older trailer that has character, I think most trailers out there are not that appealing with like weird graphics, and they look like a little box. And so, I mean, as far as Airstream, I really appreciate their attention to aesthetics, and especially with the Nest, they put a lot of design details into it that I think really set it apart. So as an aesthetically oriented person, like, it's cool. I think my skin would crawl if I was in a boxy, ugly trailer that looked like it came out of the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you go to like a campground and all the RVs and trailers, they just look the same. They all have like those like swoopy graphics on the side. Exactly. And they're all the same colors. Like they're so just boring and uninspiring. So
exactly.
Yeah, it is cool that Airstream is pretty different from, the general RV manufacturer, I guess.
Right. But with that, I mean, it comes with a price tag. Like this trailer that I'm driving around now, I think it starts at like 45 grand. So it's not cheap. Like, I'm trying to figure out their market. Like if you do want to live in it full time and you're exchanging that cost for like what it would cost for a house, like that's reasonable. But for like a general average like weekend warrior, I think it is pricey. But I mean, honestly, I don't think I can go back to living a normal life after this trip. So I'm going to try and convince them to work out a deal.
Yeah. I mean, you've already broken it in, so they might as well just give it to you, right?
Yeah, that's my thought. Like I'm questioning, like, if I put a few dents in the side, will they just give it to me because they don't want it back? But I'm not gonna actually do that. That would not be smart. But the thoughts cross my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a higher end luxury kind of trailer, but it is very cool.
Yeah, indeed.
Cool. So tell me about the trip that you're on now, the 2-month trip. Are you going around basically just doing a loop around the US?
Yeah, so I live in Los Angeles, but I had to pick up the trailer. Well, I guess I'll start with like how this even came about because it's kind of a fluke that I am even allowed to take a trailer from Airstream and travel around the country for 2 months. I was kind of at this pivot point, I guess, living in LA. I didn't really want to, and I think this is a catalyst for a lot of people doing van life or setting out on the road for a while. Is like I was kind of unsettled in LA and didn't know if I wanted to be there anymore. So like what's a way I can travel around the country comfortably and kind of see if any place grabs me. And I've admired Airstreams for a long time. So I found a contact through a friend for their marketing director and sent him this long email of kind of what I wanted to do on the road. And turns out they have this program called Endless Caravan, where you have to fill out this whole long questionnaire explaining your project. And if it's a project that they want to support, then they will loan out one of their trailers to people for 2 months. And normally it's one of their giant trailers and they give people a truck and this huge trailer. But since they had the Nest coming out, and that's perfectly suitable for someone traveling alone, they're like, yeah, you'd actually be perfect. We have this new product coming out. We can't tell you about it yet, but let's talk in a couple months and get something going. So to my surprise, I thought it was a fluke. I was like, there's no way they're going to give me a trailer. A couple months later, it worked out. So I drove from LA to Ohio to pick up the trailer. And then I'm about 1 month deep now, and I've done a giant loop around the country. So I started in Ohio, went from there down through like Kentucky, visited my mom in South Carolina, and then went all through the South, which is an area of the country I haven't explored at all until now. And then Texas, and then up the entire West Coast, and I'm currently in Portland. And then I have to return the trailer in a little less than a month. So from here, I'm going to Yellowstone, the Badlands in South Dakota, and then eventually making it back to Ohio.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a really good, fun trip. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool, but I think I may have bit off a little more than I should have for this trip. Like, it would have been nice if maybe my route wasn't so big, because literally it's been almost the longest I've spent in one place has been like just a couple days. So literally almost every day I get up, I start driving, I stop at, like, I went through the redwoods, which I've never been through and I wanted to check out for so long, and maybe got out of my car and did one hike and then hopped back in my car and continued driving. So I think, considering my timeline, I could have chosen a less grand route, but at the same time, I'm stoked to see so much of the country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, I kind of had the same. I went on a European like kind of backpacking thing, and it was the same thing where it was just like gnarly. We went around. It was just insane for 2 months. I just saw like everything, but I was like, man, we're like not like, there was a point literally where we saw the Leaning Tower of Pisa for like 40 seconds. Like, we just took our photo and then had to run back to the bus so we could make our train to get back to like the ship. So yeah, like it's nice in the fact that you can kind of go see everything and you're like, oh, well, maybe I would want to come back to this spot and spend like a month here, like just here.
Right.
But yeah, I think I do enjoy the slower traveling.
Totally. I mean, yeah, that's just something you need to be cognizant of, because you can get super excited and say like, I want to go here and here and here and here, and then you don't really consider the travel distances between all these points and realize that some days you're going to be spending the entire day in the car, and especially on this trip where I do have a time constraint and I do have to return the trailer by a specific date, like that's been signed on a contract. I feel a little bit of pressure to get through a lot of stuff, but like you said, because I'm going through and seeing all this stuff, I now have all these places where I know, like, okay, next time I go on a trip, I want to spend some more time here. So it's a nice kind of lay of the land for future trips.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah.
So has there been like you mentioned the Redwoods, but has there been sort of a favorite place or a standout place that you visited that was really cool or you had a cool experience at?
Yeah, there's been a couple. I mean, New Orleans, one, like I'd just spent a couple days in New Orleans, which is not enough. And the South has been on my radar for quite a while just because it seems like a completely different world from the rest of the U.S. And I just kind of wanted to explore that a bit. And while I was there, my friends from LA put me in touch with some friends they had in New Orleans, and it was just a fluke. Like, hey, I hit him up. He's like, yeah, do you want to go catch alligators tomorrow? I'm like, what? Yes. So I had been wanting to like do something that tourists don't normally get to do. I wanted to like dive deep into the swamplands there and see kind of that side of Southern culture. And just so happened that I was injected right into that. So I met up with this guy, Nunez, and he brought me to like a friend of the family's farm, and we went down to the swamps and shot guns, like this giant shotgun, just like shooting cans, which was ridiculous. Like, I was like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And then his friend that we met up with is actually a commercial alligator hunter. So we went out on the swamps and saw tons of alligators, and he actually netted up a small one, and I was able to hold it, and I got a photo holding it. Like, I look really calm, but this was probably like a 3-foot gator, and those things are so strong. So I was literally just fighting this thing in my hands. And then when I threw it back in the water, he's like, okay, when you throw it in the water, make sure you pull back your hands as fast as you possibly can because it can whip back and bite you. So that was,
oh my gosh,
that was a thrill, but just like super cool that these strangers that I had just met were willing to take me in and like have this very authentic local experience. Like, it's things like that. Like, if I was traveling with someone else, I wouldn't have sought out to meet these locals necessarily. So that was cool. What else? I went. Texas was in general just an eye-opening experience for me because I unfortunately have stereotyped Texas and Texans as this certain thing. Like, they all ride around in pickup trucks with cowboy hats and listen to Garth Brooks. And but my trip through Texas was quite an eye-opening experience from beautiful nature. But I went down to Big Bend National Park, which is on the border of Mexico, which is a beautiful national park, and I'm surprised it hadn't been on my radar before. But the park itself was lovely, but I met some locals through a friend again in this little ghost town, Terlingua. And they're just like the most interesting people living in this tiny ghost town. Like, one of them was this guy who's a microbiome researcher and spends most of his time in Africa, like studying people's diets. And he's done like a fecal transplant, which is exactly what you think it is, because he wanted to try and like get their microbiome in his body. But just like, you would think just hicks and low lives would be living in this tiny ghost town in the middle of nowhere, Texas, but they welcomed me in with open arms and were all like interesting in their own right. Like, another guy had explored the Amazon extensively. So I planned on just spending a day there, but ended up spending a couple days because they like literally just welcomed me in, and we had a big cookout. And it's like experiences like that, just the kindness of strangers, that has been super cool to experience on this trip. It makes me like want to interact with strangers more often in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, very cool. I think that's like something that is kind of missed for some reason in just everyday life.
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's like especially in LA because I live in LA too, in Long Beach.
Okay.
And I feel like it's just kind of, even at like coffee shops and stuff, it's just weird if you start talking to other people or strike up conversations. But
Yeah.
on the road traveling, it's not weird. It's cool.
No, exactly. Like it happens a lot more often. Like when when in LA, like I'm stuck in my little bubble and I know the people I know and that's it. But like when you're traveling, and it doesn't necessarily have to be alone. Like you can be with other people. Obviously, I'm not saying everyone needs to be a weird hermit like me, but not that I'm a hermit, but yeah, it's really cool. Like it just, I think right now, like the country is so polarized and people are retracting into their circles that they're familiar with. But I think like through traveling, you get to experience people who are outside of your lifestyle and what you're familiar with, and realize like at the root of it, we're all human. It's not us versus them. Like at the root, we all want the same things. We want to be happy. We want to provide for our family, and we want to feel safe. And just, I think travel is an amazing catalyst to kind of open your mind to other people and realize like, gosh, we aren't that different.
Totally.
Yeah.
So have you, when you're traveling around and stuff, have you been staying mostly in like campgrounds, like RV designated campgrounds, or have you been kind of at like off-grid sites and stuff like that?
It's been a combination. It depends on where I am. A lot of times, like I'm driving for so long that I'm showing up at places kind of late at night. And for trailer travel, especially, KOA campgrounds are a great resource, and you just always know that they have like knowledgeable staff and they're set up perfectly for trailers, and they just make everything easy because with trailers you have to intermittently hook up to power and water just to refill your resources. So if I'm low on either water or power, I'll make a point to stop in an RV park, which aren't necessarily the most beautiful places, and it doesn't feel like you're out in the wild. But when I do want to kind of do a little primitive camping, I use this website called freecampsites.net, which is a great resource. You can just type in any area and it will give you recommendations for, I assume it's mostly public land where they just know you won't get hassled. So it just gives recommendations and it tells you like how good the cell service is and exactly how to get there, and like recommendations of stuff to see around the area. So there's been a couple instances where I have used that site. Like a couple days ago, I camped in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere in Bend, Oregon. So it's been a combination of that a couple times and RV sites, just because I do need to plug in my trailer every now and then.
Right.
Yeah.
So have you, I mean, this trailer isn't very big. It's pretty, would you say it was like 16 feet long?
Yeah, exactly.
But have you had any like trouble or issues with like maneuvering it? Because I mean, when it's attached to the back of your car, you do have like a pretty long vessel here, you know?
Yeah, I was quite intimidated before I started this trip, just thinking it would be a completely different driving experience. And this is the first time I've ever pulled anything behind my car. So I'm like, okay, I've never done this. And I'm about to set out on a 2-month trip with this thing by myself. So I'm like, okay, Laura, are you stupid? Like, what are you doing? But as soon as I started driving with I'm at a point where I barely even realize it's behind my car. Like I realize it when I'm going up hills because my car is slower, and I realize it as far as like how many times I need to refill my gas tank. But the hardest thing I think is just backing up with a trailer, because it's counterintuitive. You have to go the opposite direction, you'd think, with the wheel to make the trailer go the right way. But since I've been driving it for a month straight, I feel like I'm a professional. Like yesterday, I got a little stressed out, but I had to turn the trailer around completely on this narrow dirt road, but was very scared to do that, but it ended up working out. But I think if anyone does decide to get a trailer for the first time, backing up is going to be your most intimidating thing. So if you do get a trailer, I'd say go into an empty parking lot and just practice, because you get to a point where you're comfortable with it. You don't want to be doing that in a stressful situation, like in a city setting and trying to parallel park and being your first time backing up the trailer. You're gonna have an anxiety attack.
Yeah, for sure. My dad he's like a typical dad, so he like knows how to, he's really good at backing up trailers and all this kind of stuff, right? So
he's a man's man.
He's a man's man, right? So he just like he's a little bit of like elitist about it, almost, I'd say, where he like one of his favorite things to do is just kind of sit by like a boat dock and just whip out his folding chair and just sit there and watch people try to like back in their boats into the water, and he just like sits there and just laughs at them all day, just loves it.
Yeah, I've been cognizant, like when I pull into RV parks and stuff, there's definitely people who just, they see that I'm a girl with this trailer by myself, and they just sit in front of their RVs and just watch me, just waiting for me to mess up horribly. And that's when it's most intimidating. Like if I'm by myself, I got it, I'm good. But like when I have an audience, it becomes a little stressful.
Yeah, for real. It's the worst, but my dad's one of them. What can I say?
Oh, your dad. I need to have a talking to with your dad. He's just making people really uncomfortable and nervous.
Oh my gosh, just the glare when they're just watching you back up.
Oh gosh, yeah.
They love
exactly.
to see the sweat roll down your brow,
Your dad is taking pleasure in other people's pain. That's horrible.
Oh man. Well, geez, Laura, this is awesome. I love talking to you. This sounds so fun, this trip that you're on, and the way you got hooked up with Airstream, and the way just that your book kind of like organically happened is so cool. I just love that. And I think
honestly, it's all been a fluke. Like I'm still pinching myself. Things have worked out nicely. I don't know who to thank for that, but thank you, whoever I should thank for this working out nicely.
Totally. So where can people find you on Instagram? Do you have a website, anything like that?
Yeah. So if you want to follow around my day-to-day travels, my Instagram is Laura_Austin. And then I do have a website with some of my more commercial work and a blog, which is just lauraaustinphoto.com.
Cool. Perfect. And then can we buy your book anywhere?
Yeah. I stopped selling it on my site, so you can just go to urbanoutfitters.com and type in solo, and it should pop up.
Perfect. And then there's a solo movie coming out soon too, right?
What?
Sorry, that was a Star Wars joke. I'm a little Star Wars nerd sometimes. So.
Oh, yeah, there is I have nothing to do with that, though. I wish. That would be nice, but no. But yeah, go see the solo movie, too. I'm sure that's going to be good, but I'm not going to have anything to do with that.
Right, not affiliated to Star Wars.
No.
Cool. Well, I mean, do you have any like last parting thoughts or suggestions that you want to say to, someone who is thinking about potentially traveling alone or doing a solo trip?
Yeah. Just don't stop letting your thoughts of everything that could go wrong prevent you from doing something you want to do. I mean, that relates to everything from solo travel to career decisions. I mean, my whole life I've not been afraid of taking chances, and every time I do take a chance, it's worked out, because once you commit yourself to something fully, I don't know what it is, whether it's the universe or whatever, it seems to reciprocate and acknowledge that, okay, you're giving yourself fully to this and things have worked out for the best. So don't live in fear, just go out and do what you want to do, and hopefully everything works out for the best.
Perfect. I like it. Cool. Well, thanks again for being on the show, Laura, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Travis.
Hey guys, this is Travis again. Just wanted to touch on a few things. Episode's over, so you can just turn this off and shut it off now, but had a couple things I wanted to share with you. If you want to listen, if you want to connect with me. Sorry, you might be able to hear my puppy Murphy in the background squeaking on her toy. But just want to share how you guys could connect with us at Campers and Vans Getting Coffee. If you would like, we are on Instagram at Campers and Vans Getting Coffee. We have a website called campersandvansgettingcoffee.com. We're on Facebook at Campers and Vans Getting Coffee, and we're even on Twitter at Campers and Vans. not getting coffee. So Twitter is just at Campers and Vans. So if you use Twitter, I'm not really big into Twitter, but you can connect with us there if you want to. That is about it. I just want to say that I appreciate you for listening and appreciate you being here, listening to the end if you are listening to this. And I would really appreciate and love, and it really helps us out if you can leave a review for this podcast. So on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this on, if you could just drop a rating and a quick review. Doesn't even have to be good. You could just be honest, but any sort of rating review really helps. Super appreciate that. And give me any tips, any thoughts, stuff you think we can improve on, or what you like, or questions that you'd like me to ask, or anything like that, or guests that you'd like to have on the show, anything like that. And you could also send me an email if you want to hello@campersandvansgettingcoffee.com. We have an email address, so you can send it there. So thanks again. Thank you for being here and being a part of this. Super appreciate you. And that's it. Have a good one. Bye.